everyone, and welcome to my oil painting class. And today we are exploring composition. We have a photograph of Fountains Abbey, and we're looking at importance within composition if we are zooming in or zooming out. Now, to show the viewer the meaning of the work, yeah, are we trying to explore the importance of the Abbey, or are we more interested in the whole environment and Abbey being belonging to the landscape? Depending on that, we can plan our composition. Now, I keep saying that we are doing some of the thumbnail designs. They're not quite thumbnail size here for me. This is just for the camera so you can actually see things. If I do a good thumbnail design, it's probably a quarter size. So then it's a quick scribble to do the planning. So somebody was recently asking me why they're so big, Julia. This is just for the camera so you can actually see them a bit better. Otherwise, they will be a bit lost. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to do one design on zooming in into the Abbey and maybe some of the details of some of those lovely grasses, and maybe one zooming out. I have also given you another image where there's another part of the Abbey, but I mainly like there some of the grasses and some of the buttercups. So this is just to encourage us to perhaps use some of the extra yellow in the buttercups. But the composition, kind of the layout, probably will be mainly from this photo. Right, so if I wanted to zoom in into my picture, I'll plan I just want to do a very quick scribble of a plan. Okay, so this is going to be my tower and the main body of the Fountains Abbey's church, somewhere here, maybe the arch somewhere there. Okay, so I'm not overly thinking of design of patterns and perspectives. I'm thinking how I'm going to place and what volume it's going to take. There might be some more ruins somewhere here. Okay, and here we can see a little bit of lovely trees, and there's some of them coming up here. Okay, maybe we can plan some of the texture. So we're zooming in into that shape, maybe even bringing it down a bit more bigger. So I'm just trying to see how much of that space is going to take. Okay, so that's quick and easy adjustments. Okay, maybe some more trees to frame our tower. Maybe this group of trees will come up somewhere here. Okay, these might be somewhere else here. And then the wreaths and maybe the buttercups or one or the other, maybe the buttercups might come in quite small here. Yeah, we've got small volume of space for the grasses here, so that might be all somewhere coming here. I might have a little bit of space for some sort of clouds, so it's not going to be too plain corner here. Okay, so we've got quite a zoomed in, very much central design on seeing the Abbey. Right, another option is to make the Abbey quite small. Now we can have a higher horizon for it if I wanted to make the shape of the Abbey moved towards the top of the painting or drop towards the bottom. So depending if I want to have a lot of sky and focus on the sky and focus maybe on the lovely clouds, or there might be some, if there would have been a sunset or something else very important. My sky is reasonably plain here. I want to focus on the grasses and perhaps buttercups and those wreaths. So my plan is to keep the horizon line is quite high. Okay, so maybe somewhere here. Then the Abbey could be planned reasonably close to the top of the painting, but it might be much smaller. Okay. As the whole shape. So I'll put my horizon line as a broken line so I could decide if it could go a tiny bit more low or not. And I could also move the Abbey about. I left it towards the right a bit. So maybe there will be some more ruins, or maybe might pick up some uh, larger size trees, perhaps something in there. Maybe this side, I'll start on the trees a bit more quicker. So we have different uh, darkness, kind of volume of that green developing quite quickly there, yeah? And then we can bring, there is a path if we wanted to bring a path. Yeah, might just, that's light area just about hidden behind there. We can focus on reeds. Yeah, there might be somewhere. I might just bring them a bit more out. They're quite close to where we are. That's quite exciting kind of texture for them. And then there might be some of the dotted buttercups a little bit further away. The reeds will be more somewhere close to the water, maybe the boggy area, maybe the river. I think the river is a tiny bit more towards left here, but maybe there is more boggy corner. But the flowers, the yellow flowers, might come through tiny bit behind. So that's how I plan my picture. And if there is a little bit of some sort of movement within the sky, that will balance that corner as well. So we have quite a lot of landscape. That Abbey's part of it has been there for centuries. We want to see that relationship of the Abbey and over the years and years, how it's been built, how it's been established, how it's developed, how it's been edited to, yeah, different life, how it became a park and how we enjoy it now. So it might be all of that environment here. It might be that Gothic ruin. It might be that something celebration of that architectural development, maybe that poetic focus on the ruin, yeah. So slightly different messages coming through. Now you can do either of the options. I think I'm keen to go for my second one. I quite like the grasses, the flowers, and keeping the Abbey a little bit more romantically part of that landscape. Right, so we're ready to get going with our design on the paper. Oh, here's my brush. I'm looking for another. Okay, so I'm using the orange background today because we're painting a lot of greens, and that lovely orange will stand out through the greens beautifully. And also the Abbey walls got that lovely warmth of ochre, so the orange will give it a lovely glow as well. Now on my palette, I have some white, buff titanium, cadmium yellow, ochre, cadmium red, cadmium orange will be fine as well, ruby, any pink type of color or a bit of purple, magenta, any of those ones. Again, just to give some of our stone a bit of warmth when we need it. Okay, that pinky color, pinky purpley. Violet, deep violet, ultramarine, cerulean blue or cobalt blue, emerald green or phthalo green or any alternative you might have. And then I have olive green, or you can go for any yellowish green to help us with the grasses. Right, so I'm gonna put my glove on. Now I finish my drawing. And I'm going to use some tips to sketch our composition. Now, often it's reasonably easy to draw a design for composition on a smaller format, but translating it to a larger format is harder. This is reasonable, good scale to translate the design. But if you want to do something much larger, you need to be really careful so you're not changing that layout when changing the scale. Right, so first of all, I'm going to have a look at the uh, position for my horizon line where the Abbey sits. So this is my halfway through point for my picture. So the line of horizon is just a bit above it. So if this is my halfway through point, it's going to make my violet a tiny bit more darker. This is quite a runny violet. It works really well on top of the orange. So I need to go for my line of horizon, maybe a little bit higher somewhere here. Okay. And let's just bring it like I've done on my sketch. Provisional first, provisional placement. Let's find our Abbey. Let's find some of the big shapes of the trees. Before we finalize it, maybe move the shapes about. Right, if I were to divide my picture width-wise, so this is going to be my half. So my Abbey tower, so this is a quarter, so it's within that side. So this is my halfway through approximately. Okay, this is my quarter. These lines I've got here, so this is where I'm going to cut my painting. So I'm painting within them. So the tower is within that area, somewhere here. So if I do a box for the tower, and we'll plan a box. This is going to be the altar, the outer wall of the altar. Okay, gonna just double check I've got my lines vertical, they're not leaning by accident. Maybe a tiny bit more further. And the tower is standing almost maybe not halfway through the whole length of the building. It's been extended numerous times, but it's not overly close to us. There is a good I don't know, at least 10-20 meters maybe. Sorry, I can't remember. It's quite a big space. So we see a little bit of a gap. There's more opening between that body of the building here. So I'm going to leave a little gap here. That will also show us the state of ruin the Abbey is, yeah? So that might be a good little plan. I do like that raised up arch. So that's also gives me an opportunity to check if my Abbey's tower is too tall, too wide. Maybe it just needs to be a little bit narrower. Okay. And then I can double check maybe this is going to be a little lower building as well. Okay. That little gap might be seen now a bit better somewhere here. But now the arch, okay, and that central arch, that will be the main window at the altar, somewhere there. Okay, and I quite like the top of the tower being a little bit uneven, got that broken corner. It gives that extra feel for the space. Okay. So it is quite small, right? Just double check it's a straight line still. Nothing is falling. Sometimes the lines are quite wide when we're painting with a brush, so shapes might look a little bit wonky first till we actually block them with color. Okay, and then I'm going to plan a little bit of other possible ruins. I can even make a couple of more shapes above, about. And there will be the abbot's house. There will be some infirmary buildings. Okay, so maybe something there. And let's plan now the trees. And then I can decide if my design is of the right size or if I need to make it bigger, smaller. So I exaggerated the height of the trees on my sketch, so I think I might keep to that. So maybe somewhere quite big here. Want to have that volume a bit more, and maybe some more behind the ruins, so it will be a lovely darker greens, offsetting the lighter stonework. And then on this side, I might even bring the tree even higher. Okay, because probably there was a big row of trees on the right-hand side, so they will be coming up a bit more high. So I'm just further away than what the photograph shows, so I'm quite happy to bring some extra height to the trees here. Okay, maybe my future tree trunks, and that just might give me an idea as well of how the space will be developing. Now, what I'm looking at the moment as well here is the whole landscape is developing quite flat. Now, you might, if you have been to Fountains Abbey, you'll know there are some lovely rocky, not huge, not overly tall, but there is a cliff here where the monks use some of the stone to build the abbey as well. So what I might do deliberately, I might have a little slant for my hill, which might even up, and I might just do another little dip in. There is a river scale there, so I might just deliberately vary my landscape, not just because I know it a bit better, but also for my composition, just to make it more improved and more exciting. Nothing's too much changing otherwise. Okay, but that dynamic will be a little bit more interesting rather than a plain horizontal line. A plain horizontal line will be gorgeous for an open landscape, for sea view, yeah. If we can't do anything else right, my abbey could be standing more on a straighter line, but my hill or maybe that green might develop tiny bit more different. Okay, so I quite like talking it through so then I know what I'm going to aim for, what I'm going to consider in later painting. Okay, so I've got another arch on the other side there. Okay. Right, and then let's have a look at the foreground. Now we had a path here. I've started it a little bit more of a zigzag here. So it's not coming too perfectly straight or too boring. So I've moved it a little bit more close to us in comparison to the photograph. Maybe giving it again just a slight variation of that movement. Yeah. Will be much more easier for us to look at that rigid line will oblige us to make loads of other rigid lines elsewhere. Okay. Maybe some of my tree is going to go a little bit over the tower even. That's little details. And then let's plant some of these tall grasses, tall reeds. I might just start with some of the diagonals. Now these are all clustered in one corner, but I quite like bringing them just a tiny bit more out, like on my sketch. Maybe some idea of direction, how many, yeah, that cluster is going to have. And what I've done deliberately, I haven't put any lines well, I've got one line. I haven't put the rest of the lines all the way to the bottom because the light might change. I don't want to make them all coming out from the bottom. So we're almost holding them in our hands. Yeah, we often end up painting that's if they are in a vase or in a big pot. So I want them to be a bit more naturally spreading out. Some of them are close to us growing, some of them a bit more further away. The light is falling differently. So this is in a way my plan of some of the shadow colors on the stalks and where those shadows will be appearing. Yeah. So I almost have a V shape of that shadow. That will be a nice entrance point again to our composition. So there might be something else coming here. So that entry point is within that V shape. And then the path will go in between the reeds and maybe the yellow buttercups will come somewhere behind as well as little glimpses at the back. Now I could have drawn some of the buttercups a bit more clearly, maybe a little bit bigger even, but I've got a dark color and I'm only going to spoil the freshness of the yellows if I'll do it now. So I'll leave it out for later on. Right, and that's okay. This is looking fine. And then anything on the sky, we might have tiny bit of busier or darker colors. So that little mark I made on the sky, that just gives me an opportunity for balance, yeah? If there are more heavy, busy shapes on that side of the painting, that still needs to have a little bit of balance. Perhaps in the sky. And that could be just done or through texture or through extra depths of the blue. So loads of options to consider what it could be there. Right, I think I'm happy with my drawing. I could have done more designs on the Abbey, but I think I want to see more of the colors and the shapes and possibly adjust it as I see those shapes appearing as well on the surface of my painting. Right, I can clean my brush and start getting my fresh colors out on the painting. Okay, let's get started with our sky. And then build up perhaps the colors for the Abbey, how they will come together, and then block most of the green in. Maybe with quite a runny paint. Maybe we can use some cloth as well to move that paint about, as well as our larger brush perhaps. And then we'll introduce some thicker strokes for the green. So sky and the Abbey. We have very small space to paint the Abbey, so I will paint it with quite thick layers. The sky could have a little bit of softer paint, but then I want to paint it with a little bit more solid paint as well. I want to leave loads of runnier strokes for the background. So, sorry tips, I wanted some oil. If I'll close this one down. Okay, so my oil is loaded on my brush. So I'm going to start with some blue first. So let's get some of the deeper sky color. So I'm getting a little bit of white and some ultramarine. Okay, we only need a little bit of ultramarine to see how dark it is. So it's not super thick. You can see just perhaps it just gently runs here for me. So I might need a tiny bit more white to make it less runnier. Okay. And let's place where the darker blue is going to be. Okay, that's quite runny still. I want those qualities maybe at some point, but not for the deeper blue. If your brush will have a lot of moisture, the viscosity of the paint will be very different. It will be harder to create thicker layers on top of it. Okay, right, so I'm placing partially transparent layers of blue, but partially it will start being slightly thicker. Okay, and I'm gonna keep topping it up. Okay, I do like seeing the orange coming through, so that's our advantage. I'm trying to have a playful strokes, have a little movement within them, so it's not just painting left and right and a very even color. Okay, now I'm going to have a little more cerulean blue with my white. Okay. And that might be merging in with our pale. That's a darker blue. Might just start bringing that one in, and that's because it's slightly thicker paint. I think because I put my brush in taps by accident earlier on. It's giving me loads of runnier strokes, but I think it's worked. Okay, so this paler whitish cerulean gives me some lovely hints of sunny day, sunny sky. Okay. And also gives us an opportunity to show some of the very distant clouds. They're almost like whispery clouds. If I'll put a bit of a paler stroke of blue here on the top of the painting, that will give me an impression that might be a shadow of the sky of the cloud. Yeah, that whispery cloud appeared, maybe disappearing, it's melting away, so it's maybe quite low. Yeah, that's quite nice. Maybe just hit it a softer corner here. Okay. I'm just playing about because this corner of my sky is totally bleached. Right, and let's keep going. Gonna make it slightly darker as I'm going to paint a higher part of the sky, and I want it to be reasonably close to darkness, to my ultramarine. Okay, I can paint around our tower, and then a little bit more white, and let's blend it down towards the horizon. I'm going to slowly add a little more and more white. Now I could have painted with a little bit of warmer color for some of my future clouds shadows, but that volume of orange and partially transparent layers of paint exposing the orange, and also the smudgy line from my drawing, that violet smudges with the blue, gives me that warmth within the painting straight away. So if I would have been painting with acrylics or even watercolors, I would be mixing maybe ochre and violet together to see the extra warmth in the painting. But within the oil here on this background, I think it's okay. Right, I'm going for a little bit more extra thicker paint close to the Abbey walls here. And I'm just leaving maybe a bit more playful silhouette. I don't know if you can see, it's quite small changes of the top wall. Okay, maybe a little gap here. Some of my shapes are still a little awkward. I'm painting perhaps more than I need. So if I'm painting over the Abbey, painting the sky over the Abbey, that's okay. We can shrink kind of that space after. So my tower does not look straight or of the right width so far. But I'm just wanted to get a little bit more of a top silhouette for the building. Maybe a little extra pale blue from the inside of the arch as well. There will be some gaps of from the windows, we'll see. But if I probably will paint them over when I start painting the Abbey, but that's little starting point might remind me where they're going to be. Okay, so it might be just a little bit of something there. So it does look like it's been a ruin for a while now. It's ready to collapse at the moment. Okay. So that's ready there. Right, and I just need a little bit more sky for the bottom part here of the painting. And I think I'm going to bring a little bit more fresh white next, but lower to the trees, I'll bring small amount of cerulean, a bit more darker tone, so that cloud is sitting above, so it's not all the white cloud. Maybe somewhere there. And then I can work with this white, perhaps. It's nice chunky white, might give me a lovely texture next to the Abbey as well. Get that little focal point for exciting clouds. And anything else in here? I quite like the idea of perhaps putting, remember from my scribble, bringing something across with some fresher white. So maybe that will be the scribble identification of possible cloud. Okay. And then I said we wanted a little bit more darker cerulean blue, a bit more close to the trees here. Maybe not too dark. The sky by the horizon will be paler, but we want that contrast. Okay, good. Just going to vary that width of the cloud here as well. It's a nice range of light tones and that softness of them, and some slightly darker tones as well. Right, don't need any dip in. It's quite an even wavy line for my horizon here. Maybe I'll deliberately dip it in somewhere more. Okay, again, gives me an opportunity to check if I like that, if it's need to be smaller number, kind of smaller depths. So before painting the trees, that gives me an opportunity to experiment. Okay, so the sky is in place. For now, it looks good. Might tweak it as always once the other elements of the painting are in place. And I have painted the sky a little bit lower into my trees, into my abbey. So I can improve my outline later on. Okay, let's have a look now at the colors of the abbey. Right, to paint the abbey, because it's so small, I'm going to move to smaller brushes. This larger one, it's small, but in comparison to some of the shapes, it's reasonably big. So I wouldn't want you to paint everything with a tiny brush. There might be a couple of ridges, there might be a couple of tidings for some of the shadows and lights with a small brush, but I'm going to start mainly paint most of it with this slightly larger brush. Right, so I need a little bit of oil. Okay, so I've loaded it and I'm just taking some of it off. I need, right, I'm going to use a buff titanium next because our stone, sunstone, what Zab is built of, will have that foundation. You can use, of course, the white if you don't have buff titanium, and you can mix it with a little bit of ochre, a little bit of violet, which I'll be mixing it now anyway. This gives me a very easy foundation color. Okay. And if I wanted to test it out as it is, if I were to place it maybe somewhere here on the tower, I can see how pale it is in comparison to my sky. So I need to make that color much darker. So now I'm going to add more ochre and more violet. Okay. And again, I might just put a little tester color. Okay, that's a bit better. And my variations will also include a small amount of pink or purple, whichever you have. Either will be lovely. Okay, so a bit of a pinky color here for me. I might test it out somewhere here. It's a little bit lost within the colors of the orange, but by the time we'll have some extra shadows, it will be fine. So I might just increase a little bit of that pink in here. See, on its own, it looks quite strong against a very bold orange. It just looks more of a brownish color, or just its darkness showing more than anything. So that's okay. So I'm going to block a little bit of the walls just as a color plan. Yeah, a bit of that pinky tone. Quite like the yellowish kind of that ochre darkness for perhaps for the tower here, for this lower part of the tower. Okay, I'm going to paint everything over my windows because that's much easier. But the top of the tower looks slightly darker, so I might move towards my violet and build overall darkness first. If I paint over that little window, I've left tiny bit of white. It doesn't matter. There's very little white there, so it will be absolutely fine if you were to decrease its amount. And I'm slowly getting the width of the tower more correctly settled here. Okay, I can see a tiny bit of a shadow on the left. So I'm just increasing my violet gently so the colors are mixing together. Okay, might just need to go slightly wider here. Okay. And there might be a shadow somewhere halfway through and down. So I'm looking for light and dark first. Bit of warmth, a bit of coolness maybe at some point. But so far I'm just looking for those patterns instead of looking for perfection shape of the silhouette. The silhouette could come later. I can play with my even sky color and eat away. Some of that brown. Okay. So I'm going to be helping myself with both brushes. If I'm painting the Abbey, in this case the tower, or I'm painting the skies, or I'm painting the trees. So I'm going to be constantly moving from one to another. Okay, that's okay. Somewhere there. And let's bring a little bit more. I've got a tiny bit of extra, maybe light. No, it's too pale. Okay. Right, now I'm going to bring some shadows to the main body of the Abbey here. I think that one might just need still improving, but the lines are so small, it's harder for me to get to them. Okay, so I might just give them a little rest. Right, so I want some shadows. I want that violet, maybe with that magenta or pinky red you've been using. Okay, and actually I do like some of the darkness of my diluted violet. So maybe if I were to wipe my brush and go back to a little bit more diluted color, diluted violet, a little bit of that opaque color from the ochres and reds. Okay, but maybe diluted violet might be still easier to move about. Okay. Where the violet is meeting a lot of white from buff titanium, it becomes more gray. So I'm using a hint of cadmium red now as well to almost warm it up more stronger. So partially ignoring my highlights mainly focusing on some of these shadows and more of a little playful pattern of light and dark. Quite like that shadow. Maybe this shadow could have had the same depths. Okay, maybe it's quite thick, but eventually might be quite a good idea. Okay, maybe that will break that shadow down as well. So small nuances of things there. That gothic, almost like ribs of the church. Okay, I'm gonna make that opening a little bit smaller, but maybe connecting it to other shapes so it doesn't stand out too lonely. Okay, this window, something there, and then this arch has a little extra darkness to it on the inside. If I can, I'm trying to be not too accurate at the same time, trying to see overall shapes. I'm quite happy with that one now. Working with a bigger brush as well gives me an opportunity to not over think, so I'm just putting a tiny bit of thicker paint of ochre and violet, but it's a yellowish look. Yeah, so that gives me a little bit more extra three-dimensional feel for that corner where some of those shadows coming in. Oh, this is a lovely depth. I just went for direct violet and I thought that might be too strong, but no. If I use a deep violet, maybe I'll do it sparingly and not everywhere. Maybe in some key strategic placements, maybe around the arch. Maybe, I think I wanted a little bit of something dark, almost in between the two parts of the Abbey church and the tower. Okay, that's a little bit better. Okay. Need to get rid of this wobble. And perhaps the right-hand side of the tower might have a tiny bit of a height to that. And so is perhaps the window. Might give us, because we're quite lower, so giving a tiny bit of depth to the window. Okay, that's quite nice depth there. And then for any extra highlights for the Abbey, I'm going to use my small brush with that buff titanium and ochre mixture. Okay, not too light. And I only want to put, like how we've done little extra shadows. I want to have a bit more strategically placed highlights. Maybe deliberately planning a little mark next to a shadow, one of those super dark shadows. So have a little play of placing a couple of dabby dots, little shapes, and stop. Okay, maybe this will connect. I don't want to do too many. I quite like the cluster of that, of the volume of the shadows. Okay, maybe do a little bit more at the bottom because I haven't quite painted the pinks all the way. Okay, that need to have a bit more of a flatter shape. It did look like a tooth with roots, so I'm gonna try to turn it to more of a architectural feature rather than something what reminds me of. Okay, I think that's still not quite right. Now, it's okay to spend a little extra time on such a small scale painting because the rest will not compete with that volume of details and we can develop the rest more freely. Okay, that didn't work, so I'm just going to simplify that a little more. Right, if something didn't work for you, blend it together. Turn it to a shape. Turn it to a little bit more. This is almost like a box here now, yeah? So by doing that, you simplifying the color. If you I doubt you'll have a similar mistake as I'm having here. You might have it somewhere else. You might not have it anywhere. But I simplified the shape first, and also by doing that, I removed the extra paint from that area. So it will be easier for me to bring some fresh paint. For example, my darker shadows here, and perhaps just something at the bottom here. I think that might be all I needed. Just trying to keep my lines a little more straighter because the smaller wobble I have, which I can get away from grasses or other areas, it's not quite working for the stonework. Okay, all of that will be here together. All of this one a bit more here together. Maybe tiny bit more depths under some of the little arches for me, just to again make a gentle connection, not everywhere, but maybe in a couple of spaces. Okay, I'm happy to stop there. Right, quite a lot of orange here through my arch, so maybe a little bit blocking of that white. Okay, that's much calmer. Okay, any other wobbly strokes which make the ruin too detailed or too uneven? Okay, that's better. That's strict design of shapes is much more clearer now. Okay, I'm happy with that. Might put a tiny bit of white, excuse me, a little bit of paler white, maybe somewhere here, to show that might be an opening. Just a little hint. Right, good. Good. Nice suggestive shapes. Just a little tweak here as well. There is perhaps a little step. Okay. That's quite a romantic ruin. I'm happy with that. If you would have done a big shape of just pinky, violety, ochre blocks, and a little hint of violets and a little hint of highlights, and it's stayed less finished, it's absolutely fine to keep it that way because it's much further away. Also, it might give you a bit of a rest. Try not to finish it all in one go. Give yourself a bit of a rest, work on some other larger strokes, see how it sits part of that landscape, and then come back and tweak it a little bit more. The reason I'm trying to finish as much as I can, first of all, there is no oil here, so I can lean my hand in here. I tend not to lean as much, but if you wanted to lean, you can do that one. But you can also do it by using another brush. So for example, if I'll hold another brush against my surface, and then, so it's kind of you leaning on that one, and then you can put your hand on that brush. That, if this is all wet oil, you can still do that. Even if you were to rest on a wet surface, it's going to be just one dot, which you can fix very easily. But that's a good way of leaning your wrist and then doing a bit more precise, a bit more small marks there. So that's a little tip for us. Right. Let's give you a bit more time to finish your Abbey, or as much as you might want in the next few minutes, and then move to the next stage. Right, next, I'm gonna go for my larger brush, as I want to have some more looser paints applied for the greens. So I'm gonna use quite a lot of oil, and I'll start with some lighter colors, perhaps in front of the Abbey for the grasses. So I'm gonna go for some white as a starting point. Maybe a little bit more oil for me. Some cadmium yellow. Okay. I do want it reasonably runny. And I'm gonna use very small amount of emerald green. I could have gone for olive green, but I think I'll use that one more directly as a thick color. But if I wanted to have more of a runny color, I'll go for emerald green, so there wouldn't be as much paint. It would be that color translates very easily just by diluting it in oil. Okay, good. So that's quite a runny paint. Looks quite nice on the palette, but it will. I can see. Oops, it's dripping off my brush already. So we'll go very transparent. Look how much orange I can see. So when we paint oil on the surface of the painting and then place color, this is almost the same, but I'm already placing a tiny bit of color as I'm going. The tricky part, if it becomes a little more streaky, so let's mix the paint well so there wouldn't be chunks of that streakiness coming in. So it's a bit of that plainness, lighter, more transparent layer first. It also gives me an opportunity to not over block my painting. Yeah, with thick paint too earlier on. Okay, that will be good. So just quite runny paint, runny pale green here. So then I can go with a little bit more thicker paint. So for example, my olive green. Yeah, that becomes a bit more thicker. Still quite transparent on its own. It has that transparent properties. Okay, so maybe somewhere here. So I want to bring it a little bit more close to the reeds, sorry. Okay, and maybe somewhere here as well. If I want to have more pale color, I need to have more white and more solid paint. So I'm gonna go for my white and olive green with some yellow. And that will give me a much more solid opaque color. Okay, might look earlier on quite similar, but that blocks any of the markings below much more stronger. And what I wanted from it is to have that variety of thick paint and thin paint close to my Abbey. So maybe I'll have a flatter color next to the ruins. I should have painted my other broken ruins, forgotten. Okay, that's quite nice. Okay, maybe a little more, tiny bit more towards the green, less towards the yellow. I want to have that bank perhaps darker than what's in front of the Abbey, but I want to have the color meeting the other one. Okay, so now depends how thick, how boldly you will press on your brush. If you press quite strongly, you might lift the color because they're quite transparent layers. So be careful of well, experiment with it, see what feels, yeah, what it does by pressing a bit more or by being gentle with the brush. So I'm varying those pressure points, how much thicker paint or more runnier paint comes out from my brush, or what's remains on the painting. Okay, so this has become more solid here, still with loads of glow of depth to that. Okay, now I want a little bit of extra darkness next, so I'm just going to squeeze the paint from my brush and add more green to it. Okay, more emerald green and more violet. Okay, maybe a tiny bit more violet so it doesn't look as green. It's got more of a not hacky color, but maybe even a hint more of cadmium red. And also all of this is going to go against my orangey background. So if I dip it into a bit of oil, yeah, that runny, partially runny stroke, I might just cover all of that orange so it doesn't, even if I'm going to trim the board, that orange might be still strong. So pressing on the brush, smudging it across, bringing it over. These lovely big strokes. Okay, give us good depths. And I'm going to paint this one as well. Quite like just rubbing the brush in and just seeing how it comes up to that thick paint of white and blue on the borders. And also how the brush distributed the darkness. I wasn't quite planning of a volume of light and darker green separating, but it's happened quite excitingly here. So go with the flow. See what the brush is going to create for you. Yeah. So that might be another darker group of trees here. And I do love the glow of orange below. So the idea of putting a bit of tree trunks and then just keeping that depth as it is, yeah, might be that rock, the wall, the wall, the cliff. That's the one. Okay, maybe I'll smudge some of the borders here between the Abbey and the grass. It just looked a bit too strong, so that's a bit more natural. That's a bit too strong. Maybe that's a little bit more softer. Okay, good. I quite like to have some depths as I've done in these trees here, so I might just bring a small amount of violet. I didn't put violet directly, I mixed it with my greens and then kind of rub it in again so that transparent orange still comes through. Yeah, and then the extra depths as well. Quite like that little dip as well. So maybe I'll deliberately emphasize that as well here, as there is maybe that landscape change in tone. Okay, good. Maybe a bit too perfect, so I might just smudge it a little. My paint is too dark, so I might have to come back to it, okay? Right, but let's plan some of my reeds. I'll think of those darker tops. So if I'll use, without washing my brush, I'm just getting extra violet with that green. And now I want to cluster the darker bits. And because our layer of the green below is soft, if we don't like something, we can very easily remove those silhouettes without any problem. But that gives us a bit more of a brave movement within the strokes. Okay, now let's maybe group up some of the shapes here. Maybe think of different heights. Maybe think of if one is a lonely shape, some might be more clustered. Okay, sometimes I try to copy a group or move it. I quite like the leaning over group, but I maybe don't like it where it is. I might just lose that lovely corner of the Abbey. So I might move it elsewhere. Okay, sometimes we just look for an idea of shapes or their size. Okay, that might be a lonely one here again. Quite nice, some of them becoming a bit lighter. And as the layer of green paint is so oily, it just lifts the color and I see a glow of it behind, which is wonderful. Right, I want to put some more reeds here. They're getting slightly bigger because they might be closer to us. So I might be getting them slightly wider. Not too many big ones if you're doing big ones. Okay, maybe one here. Maybe somewhere here, one in the corner. Again, for that little balance of shapes. And don't be scared of adding. If you overdo it, you can always paint them back. But adding one at a time and stepping away, kind of looking, might be a really good solution for that. Okay, maybe another group somewhere here. And I wanted some more. I think maybe another big one here. Slightly changing angles, so they're not all perfect. And if I've got almost 3, 4, 5 single ones here, so I'm thinking immediately, okay, this is a 2, this is a 2. Maybe this one will have another body. Okay, maybe there will be a tip just showing. So they don't look of a similar cluster. Okay, that's more of a bigger group here now. Okay. So it feels that we're not walking through, but we see that distance of the smaller ones to medium size to a bit more larger ones. Is it one? Is it two or three together? Doesn't matter. That's kind of the idea of us suggesting some of the shapes. Okay. Now, next one, I want to place some of our buttercups. So I'm going to leave my green brush aside. I have quite a lot of unpainted surface and quite a lot of very loose and unfinished surface. But I want to place some of the yellows in so we know what we're working with as well. I'm going to be back to my smaller brush I was using for my Abbey. Not the tiny one, but smaller one. And I'm going to use some fresh white with some cadmium yellow. Now that will be a lovely, lovely color on top of our buttercup's petals. So I'm going to leave it aside, but that's going to be also base for my first layer color for the buttercups, and that's going to be done with some cadmium red and yellow. So we're looking for that deeper orangey, if not Van Gogh sunflower color, maybe a little bit more reddish. Right, and I'm going to place, okay, that's quite dark, so maybe a slightly lighter version. It looks dark against my greens, but I think maybe some of my greens will need to be slightly darker as well. So I'm going to test it out. Okay, that's a bit better lighter. Okay, I'm going to place a couple of those shapes to see how they are in size. Now, the buttercups are very, very small flowers. Well, not very, very small, but much smaller than reeds. So this buttercup might have been really close to me, okay? Might have just almost on that little wiry, uh, quirky stem popping up just next to us. But the other ones will be much more further away, and they will become more as groups of yellow. So I'm going to explore that option, just mixing enough of a similar color so I can place a bit of a chunk together. Okay, so that will be a much further distant group of the flowers, as we have partially planned them, partially left till now. So they're not jumping at us yet. I want some of them being lost in that environment, and then we'll find them with extra color. So I'm not painting individual flowers here. Maybe even that initial flower will become a shape of flowers. I haven't decided yet. Okay. And there will be some coming in between as well. So lovely meadow. Okay. Maybe a little bit of something close to us as well. Maybe breaking it down and keeping it to that side of the reeds. Okay. And now I'm going to test out a little bit of fresh yellow and white. Tiny bit of oil just to make the paint slightly smoother. So it's reasonably thick, chunky paint. And if I just test a couple of strokes, that's lovely. I don't want to do it all yet because I want to see that bolder light once I'm happy with my greens. But testing it out is good to see if we're on the right track with the light, if we're on the right track with the color. And also, I want to make a decision regarding how deeper my greens are going to be. So checking a little bit of that yellow. So what I'm doing with my yellow, I'm going over the shapes, partially over the shapes are applied in a darker orangey color. I'm not creating new ones. I'm just within those shapes. Okay, that's nice. Right, anything I can paint yellowish as a field for the distant area, that might be, just need to be careful it's not going to appear too busy. I think that might be a little dab of color. Also might give me an opportunity to show that steepness, gentle steepness of the hill the Abbey standing on. Okay, maybe a little more dabby, otherwise it might look like a path. Okay, if it will become more greens, that's fine as well. Okay, that's good. Anything here? So we're painting a landscape, an abbey within its environment. That's quite a nice glow. I'm just exploring that opportunity. Can always turn that volume of yellow into more of a grassy color. Well, I think that's working well. Maybe a bit too much here. So I can bring some green over and turn it to more of a bank. Okay, a bit more calmer. Calmer part of the grass. Just smudging some of the strokes and then coming back to, okay, something is, maybe that path has a little bank to it as well. That's how it's happened for me. So I'm going to interpret it that way. Okay, so to turn my path, make my path a path, I might be used a little bit of buff titanium and within my pinky orangey shape, might just smudge it and make it disappear. Okay, it might be a different surface, so it doesn't matter if it's slightly lighter or more grayish or a little bit more bluish or a little bit of different color. We don't know what that path might be. As long as it works within your paint, I think that buff titanium somehow looks almost bluish. Well, maybe because of the brightness of the yellow across and the greens. So I might take some of it off towards that orange background so it's not too strong. Okay, maybe that direction. you need to paint over a darker shape, just paint it through, and you can always bring the darker mark later. Okay, so that green comes back. Slightly over. Right, I'm ready to start working for some bigger shapes of dark at the front as well. Now, I want to use my cloth and I haven't used it yet. Okay. Right, again, let's have a look at now my trees here. Could do with tiny bit of highlights on them. So while I'm starting on my darker tones, that might bring me an opportunity to work with a little bit of highlights on my trees. So I'm mixing anything I had from yellow, anything from that pallid green. You could have used a little bit of emerald green or olive green, something a little paler. Okay, that's a nice little stroke. And again, because the paint is so runny and soft, I can just introduce a stroke, and it gives me kind of, it blends the color, but at the same time gives me a little bit of something extra in tone. Okay, this is just a little divided it. Okay, and perhaps a little more here. Okay, not too strong yellow, so I need to blend it a bit more. Okay, it's coming a bit more forward. And I think perhaps a slightly lighter tone, maybe for the lower trees here. Okay, needed a little more yellowish green here. Just fixing the corner here as well. Okay. Good. Small amounts of light color is improving the view here as well. Good. Right, next, let's have a look at my foreground finally. I think I'm going to start applying strokes with a brush and maybe bring the cloth or cloth to that. So my darker greens, warmer greens first. I'll do a little bit of blocking with that color here. So it connects to my earlier paints, but slightly darker version. So you might have had a small amount of violet here within your greens. I'm just using my palette green. Yeah, whatever is left of that paint. I'm not trying to save paint. I'm just trying to connect colors in between them. Okay, so that lovely glow of orange is partially going. Maybe something else here. So what am I painting? Am I painting individual leaves? No. Am I painting individual shadows? No. I'm kind of painting the volume of the space. Remember when I drawn a little V shape? I've kept that here, but I blocked it this side. So it started to look more plain, a bit more boring. So I'm gonna come back to that extra light. Maybe with some extra yellow, a bit of ochre. Yeah, and on top of that, colors will sit well. If I would have gone for smaller, sorry, more of a correct color on the palette and applied it there, would have been not enough light. So I deliberately went for something extra paler. Okay, that's better. So that V shape is coming back. Might still have a little more of that V shape established, not by just painting lighter tones, but bringing some extra depth to some of the shadows. Okay, I'm happy with that. So let's bring some more shadows to this area as well. Right, so you know what? I'm quite happy using my brush. I don't think I might need my cloth, but you can use it by wrapping your finger around it and just smudging some of the areas or clearing some of the stalks if I wanted some more fresher orangey lines. So that might be quite a good cleaning tool. Depends how thick or uh, thick or thin your quality of paint. You will be able to lift the lines, or you will be able to just move it, kind of smudge it. But I think that effect is quite good. It lifts the color, and that will give me maybe some of the tops of the reeds as well, so then I can tweak them after. Okay, that's quite nice glow here as well. Right, and let's bring a little bit more darker green. So again, back to small amount of emerald green, some violet. Let's test this color. Okay, that's quite nice. So it's a bit more cooler version now. I'm gonna do it again, small amount at a time. These might be a bit more of a leaves, or again, I'm gonna try to do that V-shape, plan my darker strokes within that area. Okay, maybe these are more leafy strokes. The others might be more shapes. Maybe I'll paint around the flower. I'm just trying to make sure I cover some of my left out orange background. Okay. Lovely softness and glow. Okay, maybe even working above my path. Yeah, I quite like that one now. Okay, and again, my paint is getting slightly pale as I'm working on top of a lighter surface. I'm gonna top it up with the darkness. And let's focus a little bit more on this area. If there are too many thin strokes, everything becomes too blocky in a similar texture. So try to work, if it's not even a leaf, it might be a shape. Okay, maybe it will stop within certain linear directions you were breaking down. Maybe it will be just blocking that V shape. I'm just going to do that V shape here. Yeah, it just gives me the silhouette. not direct, but if I know what I'm looking for, I'll see it. Okay. And also I can have that V darker, maybe somewhere close to my buttercups. So then that contrast is great as well. Again, maybe not everywhere, maybe a little bit on one side, depends how the work is developing. Now my reeds are starting to get a little bit lost or partially hidden by some of that green, which is absolutely fine. I will reestablish some of them, but the rest might remain as they are. Okay, that might be there. So it looks quite a lovely depth to the to that meadow, to that boggy, coming close to the boggy area. Good. Right, I'm going to get my brush back for the reeds. I want some of that depth. Okay, tiny bit more oil. I'll clean my pot and top it up with some clean oil. My pot is getting mucky as well. So that's why I use a small pot, so that oil could be changed more frequently than if it would have been a larger pot. Just by wiping it is enough. Don't have to perfectly clean it. In between topping ups. At the end of the session, when I finished, and I know I'm not coming back, for example, painting the following day, then I might clean it better, maybe with some tape so it stays, dries out, clean. Okay, right, so my reeds. So a bit more oil and a bit more violet. Okay, and that should be a good color to go on top of my existing colors, just direct violet. So now I'm going to make a decision which shapes I'm going to keep dark and which ones I'm going to keep as they are. Okay, maybe a little extra depth here. If the paint becomes too runny, I think this is a little bit runny for me. I can go for more solid violet. It will become then very dark, so use a small amount of ochre and that cadmium red as we had before. Then the color will become more opaque and less runny. Okay, so let's see where that cluster of darker shapes could come in. I'm also going to try to tidy my reeds heads so they're less wobbly. Some of them started to be a bit more, not fluffy, like they're almost opening up and start losing their seeds, yeah, the little fluff. So I want them to be a little bit more rigid, or at least in some of them, I want to see more rigid shapes. So they're a bit more midsummer. They're not quite ripened to start losing that shape. But also, don't be scared of, okay, these are a bit too perfect now, yeah, so I don't want that either. So a little imperfection is needed, so it's a balance. Okay, maybe a little more sharpness here. Maybe I'll keep the rest as it is. Maybe this one will have a bit more depth. And then that darkness maybe will go on the outer side. Okay, that's better. That glow of orange from underneath is marvelous. It's done most of the work for me here. Okay, this is a bit too perfect, so I'll smudge it a bit more. So it's a balance between making it slightly straighter to making it not too perfect. Okay, right, let's sharpen some of these. It's mainly just finding a little bit of elegance from the earlier stage when I just had a little extra play. Yeah, without it, I wouldn't have been so free. And I also don't want all the reeds to have the same depths and the same, excuse me, the same darkness. So if we can vary that, that would be lovely. Some of them will have a little stalk coming out at the top of them. Some of them we don't see it as much. So see what it happens. Okay, that's too strong. That's two together, so I've got two shapes. One is partially behind the other. Okay, so my lovely orangey stems, which I've been smudging, are working well. Quite nice that, quite like that shadow in this corner. I'm thinking of adding a couple of more bolder highlights for my buttercups in the moment. I'm going to top up tiny bit of darkness under my trees in the distance. If you still wanted to make any tree trunks, maybe a little dabs of darkness might just imitate some of the tree trunks. Yeah, and that horizontal line under will or smudge the darkness and create a shadow, or it will gives that more solid shape as well. Again, depends what type of quality paint you have in those areas. You can have different effects, which are all exciting. So don't be scared if they slightly different. So it's reflecting for me. I'm trying to see it actually comes out how I was intending. Okay, nice and soft. Good. And I also need to remember to do my tiny bit of the ruins at the back. Right, so a couple of strokes for the ruins of the Abbey, infirmary, and a couple of extra bolder highlights for buttercups, and we are there. So I'm back to buff titanium for the ruins. The stonework, bit of extra ochre. It's quite a nice color there, whatever is left. but it's not quite linking to my main stonework for the Abbey. So I'm using both titanium, some ochre, a little bit of pinky red, or could have been a bit of purple. Right, and let's place some of that color there. And I might place it elsewhere, somewhere here. And here as well. And small amount perhaps of that violet color. Violet, a little bit of extra ochre. Maybe a tiny dab of red with it. Tiny bit more darker violet. So it's not all the same plain pale color, but these turns of the walls and corners and yeah, little extra sharper shadows. Very suggestive. That's quite nice. Also gives me an opportunity to spot perhaps what's happened to the greens to the trees at the back. Maybe have a tiny little tweak for the trees. Shape, that silhouette. Okay. Okay, that's a bit better as well. And that tree looks a little too similar, so if I'll break it down as well here. Good. Right, I'm happy with that. Good here. Buttercups. Again, I need to clean my brush. And I need some fresh white, which I can see on one corner here. Okay, let's bring it on a clean palette. Fresh yellow. If I'm running out, I might need to squeeze some more, but I think I might just have enough because I wanted a very pale whitish yellow and quite thick as well, so more of the white than the yellow. So it's almost like reflecting some of the sky, that very pale highlights of maybe dampness in the flowers. So let's be a bit more brave. So it will start appearing a bit more whitish like, but it's not white. And I'm going to try to slightly vary those little dots and dabs in size, and also a little bit up and down that space, maybe something slightly bigger. Close, if I wanted to bring it slightly closer to us. I'll start from a distance first. I want that sparkle of light. That environment, the Abbey is surrounded, that beauty of the meadow. That calmness, what the residents wanted from the peaceful environment, initially at least. Okay, just playing with a little bit of that light. And I think I still need a tiny bit more darker yellow, so I might need to squeeze. I think I can bring a couple of buttercups a bit more close to us. Maybe just a couple. Remember how I was testing it earlier? So that deeper yellow with tiny bit of cadmium red. I think I can bring somewhere. It will also calm the vertical linear shapes, and an odd flower will pop up. I just need to keep topping up the fresh paint because there are loads of green here. I'm also thinking the individual odd flowers at the front are not polka dots. They're not just appearing in a even pattern. So for example, have a look. One flower, another one, another one. They're getting slightly bigger and slightly smaller further away, but they're very similar size gaps in between. So I might need to break it down. So it doesn't mean that it's gonna, just happen to be perfectly unsymmetrical. It's placing some of those flowers in and then checking if they are working or not. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now I'm gonna put a bit lighter color on top of them. Okay, just maybe on top, maybe one on the side, maybe one more of a line. Okay, so there's almost a little grouping of shapes. And I might even, if it will work, I'll clean my brush and just pick up some paler color. Might have a little bit of branches. My brush is mainly scraping the paint off, then applying new color. Okay, so cleaning it up and bringing another thin stroke will give that feel of gentle grassy strokes. All right, these are a bit too similar again. So maybe somewhere there, and then that one might be behind. They're almost like little nets of stems just protruding at the front. Right, I think I'm ready to stop. Might just be a tiny bit more lighter. Okay, too bright. Maybe a tiny bit more sharper. It means that I need to put a tiny bit of something darker. Yeah, if you don't like something as a stem too thick, just smudge that color back. Bring a little bit more darkness. Right, and I think I'm definitely stopping now. Thank you very much for painting alongside of me today. I hope the painting transported you to the summer day at Fountains Abbey and that environment which was important to us for the Abbey to be in. Yeah, that whole valley, giving you the sense of sunshine and lovely fragrance of the meadow. Thank you very, very much for today. And if you were to decide to paint a different view, a zoomed in view, that would be very exciting to explore as well. And I hope to see you very soon again. Thank you.